Good afternoon. My name is Mega. Pallavi was 11 years old when she had her first period. She was in her math class in school, kilometers from home. That moment for many girls can be a crisis. The shame, the stain, the embarrassment, the giggles in the hallway. But for Pallavi, she did not run. She reached into her bag and grabbed a pad. Because 1 month earlier, someone had come to her school and taught her what menstruation was, taught her how to use a pad, and had given her one to keep. And so Pallavi got her period, reached into her bag, went to class, and continued learning. For her, this day did not become a crisis. Pallavi was able to maintain her dignity because there was a system in place that understood her needs. I've been working in menstrual equity for over 15 years. And there's a kind of obvious truth that comes up over and over and over again. Menstruation is not rare. It's not unpredictable. And we are all the result of a missed period. And yet, across the world and across the education system, often menstruation is still treated as a personal inconvenience and not an institutional responsibility. We design schools around chalkboards and books and desks, and let's face it, boys. But we're not designing it around really predictable biology. When information and bins are not available, when there is shame that shrouds the issue, when bathrooms are unusable, when there's so much shame and stigma, girls absorb that cost. They're missing days of school. Their dignity erodes. They disengage. An estimated 23 million girls drop out of school in India the day they get their period. In the United States, 1 in 5 girls misses school because she doesn't have access to sanitary napkins. This is not a developing country issue. This is an infrastructure issue. But last month, something extraordinary happened. In the case of Dr. Jaya Tharoor versus the Union of India, the Supreme Court decided that menstruation is a constitutional issue. Not a women's issue, not a private issue, a constitutional issue that is tied to the right to life, the right to dignity, the right to privacy. This shift is profound. Article 21 tells us that menstruation is tied to the right to dignity. The reason why this is so profound is because it shifts the responsibility from the individual girl to the institution. The court says that all schools must have pads, bathrooms, education, and understanding around menstrual issues. This goes way beyond just pads. It's about design. For over 15 years, through the Desai Foundation and our Asani Sanitary Napkin Program, I have seen in thousands of villages, I have seen girls whisper because they're so scared to ask questions. I've seen girls not know what was happening with their bodies. I've seen mothers apologize for biology. And sadly, We've seen lots of lives lost because of shame, ignorance, or health complications around menstruation. But I've also seen what happens when the system changes. When there is a separate and clean bathroom, when there are pads available, when teachers speak openly, and when boys are sensitized, you can see dignity physically. Eyes lift up, backs straighten, hands go up. And suddenly, there is so much more confidence and dignity in the room. One of the most powerful moments is when a girl not just receives a pad, but when the system around her has changed. I remember visiting a school in a rural India where there were private bathrooms and there were bins and there were pads available. And boys were sitting next to girls in awareness sessions. The building that they were attending school in looked the same, but the experience for each girl in this room and in this building was completely different. Girls who once missed a day every month are showing up consistently. They're entering the workforce. They're completing their school. And sometimes something even more profound happens. A leader emerges. In one of the villages that the Desai Foundation was working in, there was a girl named Bhavna. We'd been working in their school, bringing them pads and educating the boys and girls about menstruation. But Bhavna came to us and said, you know, the women in the village don't have the same access that we do here at school. And so she took it upon herself to collect and distribute pads in her village. Nobody had assigned this task to her. But because there was a system in place, a leader emerges. She was able to fill that gap and rise to the occasion. This is what the infrastructure of dignity looks like. But this moment goes way beyond the borders of India, because the uncomfortable truth is that periods are still thought of as an afterthought or an inconvenience in most parts of the world. When we are treating it as a secondary issue and not a structural issue, it causes problems. However, if we look at what's happening in the world around bodily autonomy, when things are being questioned, when women's rights are being eroded, this issue becomes starkly more important. In the United States right now, there are about a dozen laws that are in direct opposition to Article 21. There are states where data is vulnerable. There are states where speech is limited. And of course, access to pads is suddenly tied to geography and ideology in many other places in the world. Dignity should not be this fragile. India's Supreme Court has offered a different framework, a revolutionary one. Menstrual health is foundational to equity, to dignity, and to your health in school and education. It's now a constitutional law, and it must not depend on budgets or charity or the benevolence of others. The entire system needs to work together. Governments, schools, nonprofits, and community to make this Article 21 a reality. What an opportunity India has. What might the world look like if we achieved menstrual equity? The language in this law made me think, where else are dignity and infrastructure intrinsically connected? What if in the United States we had adequate parental care and child care What might that do to the income inequality gap? When it comes to disability accessibility, what if that was thought of as part of the structure and the infrastructure and not an afterthought? Think about how many more people would be able to live fully. If internet accessibility was thought of as a right and not as an add-on, think about how many people in communities would go from isolated to having opportunity. So the question is, why does a girl's geography determine whether she has access to menstrual rights? Why are we building schools without accounting for what's going to happen to half of them? This isn't just about pads. It's about the infrastructure of dignity. It's about what we consider essential and who we're designing systems for and who we're leaving out. When we redesign the system for the most vulnerable populations, everybody benefits. When menstrual health and equity is reached, healthier people is a healthier population. Improved sanitation elevates global health. When girls are finishing school, women are entering the workforce, and the productivity of the nation goes up. The GDP rises. When boys are sensitized, the culture of the classroom improves, and people want to learn. Dignity can scale. Somewhere today, another girl is going to get her period. In the United States, in India, in Kenya, in urban centers, in rural communities. Is that moment going to be a crisis? Is it going to be a crisis for her? The biology is predictable. Are we going to build systems that will actually factor in this predictable biology? Will she run and hide, or will she reach into her bag, prepared, and continue on with her school day? Equality is not about just allowing girls into the system. It's about redesigning the system so that girls were never excluded in the first place. Equality is about the systems and ensuring that they belong there. India has begun this redesign. And in my opinion, the rest of us have a choice. Are we going to be brave enough to build systems and infrastructure to center dignity and to center our girls? We know that when we empower girls, the entire community elevates. Because when dignity becomes structural and not symbolic, girls don't just stay in school, they thrive, they build economies, they elevate public health. If the world's largest population can center democracy and constitutionalize dignity, if the world's population can center dignity, the rest of us have no excuse. Thank you.